we debriefed, and I talk about this in Hidden War, we debriefed a tier one level plaza boss running 50 to 100 grows in Northern California that was actually picked up and popped by our white dope team in Silicon Valley for a 22-pound methamphetamine cook operation. And obviously, I got to sit in on that debrief interview with DEA and a bunch of other people and Q&A him very candidly. He was very honest. You know, he didn't want to go away for the rest of his life. And obviously, everything stays anonymous for obvious reasons on that. But I asked specifically, why the poisons, man? Why are you bringing in these neurotoxins that are even deadly to your own growers? And basically what he told me, Vince, he said, you know, it's what has been effective for us in the system since day one when we've been growing this stuff in Mexico. And we are aware of the dangers. And you're starting to see growers with nitrile gloves and personal protection equipment when they're putting this stuff on the plants. He said, but we're not going to change because it's the best, most effective product of keeping not only animals from chewing up our, $5,000 cannabis plant, but guys like you going in and taking it out and moving it out because you're eventually going to learn how deadly it is. Damn. And I went, no shit. So, and the mindset is we don't care about human health and we don't care about water stealing. We don't care about your wildlife. We care about profits and we care about moving something for the organization. That's our big reward. And when we knew that mindset was what was driving these guys, obviously we knew one, we had to be more careful. We had to be far better equipped to deal with these poisons, and we had to educate. And something I've been pushing, brother, more than anything else with both books and all the TV and all the documentaries and the news stuff that you and I mutually do is just know, people, what's going on. Know that this cartel threat we have embedded in America, yeah, I focus on the weed. That's kind of my forte, obviously, because of the environmental impacts. But these are polycriminals that are involved in every aspect of cartel crimes. P2P, super meth, same group, different faction that's doing some of the weed operations, right? The fentanyl production that you and I both know, hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying. That stuff is nasty. Fentanyl and the cartels from the Sinaloa side have actually, I now live full-time in Montana, have relocated from California, still spend a lot of time in California because work and caring about the stuff that we're talking about. But the most least populated state, what they call one of the last great places in America, is now being infiltrated by the Sinaloa cartel and Jalisco New Generation on the fentanyl problem into tribal lands, into tribal communities, into other rural communities, and impacting that. So these are the same factions that are still or have been involved in the weed trade in the past, and human trafficking and child sex trafficking and gun running, it's all being done by all of them. So anyone that says, I hear about this weed thing, but I don't use cannabis. These poisons sound nasty. I don't live anywhere near a wooded area where a cartel's got a grow site going. I said, yeah, but you have children that are at risk of trafficking. You have fentanyl, I guarantee, in your schools right now because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So all of these things factor into the mindset of this is an American problem for all of us. It's not just my weed fight. It's not just California. It's not just the Texas border where you're operating and living. It's all of it. And these poisons now are everywhere. They are everywhere in these grow sites. And what I was able to talk about in Congress last October when talking about specifically how widespread this problem is across the border. And when you mentioned and asked, hey, how many miles from the border was that grow site you found? That's where Congress had to get past just focusing on the border.
Yeah.
Border control, this is an issue. Well, guys, it goes way beyond that. It's embedded in Silicon Valley going back 20, 30 years. And now it's in Montana and it's been there a lot of years. So we need to look at that. And these poisons aren't going away. They're being imported still. And we've also seen now a really kind of current event now is the Chinese element and the Chinese organized crime groups now working hand in hand with Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation, collaborating on the Chinese taking over a majority of the weed trade. And then in exchange for precursor chemicals for fentanyl and super meth to the Mexican cartels, as you know. And we just got wind of that late last fall and started to see this in Northern California. And with a lot of friends in DEA and people I'm working with, actually, we're educating on this stuff. And the congressional groups weren't really aware of that. And they went, wait a minute. So China organized crime from mainland are absolutely embedded and in cahoots with the Mexican cartels, and at the same process laundering billions of cash dollars within middle America with all these crimes, and they're working together. I said they absolutely are. And anybody that doesn't, isn't aware of this on a domestic security program needs to know, just for security purposes, what we're facing right now.
I wanted to go, and absolutely love it. The Chinese conversation is interesting, where that's just something that everyone, I think, should be paying attention to and seeing where that goes. I try not to like steer any kind of agenda, just like the conversation we're having right now is perfect, right? There's just facts. Yeah. And I think that's how we really. So that's why I really love this conversation even more, because it's that. The questions I have is how is this connected to human trafficking? Is it just the fact that when these grows are happening, they help finance and fund other organizations, or they continue to, is that what it is?
It very much is. But the other thing we're seeing human trafficking, from these cartel groups, and we're seeing some of the people trafficked actually put into these grow sites to run them and operate them under direction. And what's interesting is what we started to see these last couple of years, Vince, is with the Chinese and Mexican cartels working together, we're getting military-age males right now, as you know, coming across the border by the thousands with clean passports from mainland China. And those guys are here with skill sets. Those guys are here to run like a grow operation, say in Northern California. I just talked with Michigan State Police and worked with them a week or so ago, in Pennsylvania and Maine and all these other states now that are seeing the Asian cartel element in the marijuana trade. And they're running across a ton of Chinese and then Mexican workers being trafficked to work in these grow sites. Some of them are actually, they're under duress where they're working and they're told they're going to get paid and they're not getting paid. We've even seen it in extreme cases where they're all being put into like a large RV to, sleep for the night, and the lock goes on the latch from the outside. They're not allowed to leave. And then they're working, under duress in these grow sites. The other thing is, it's just kind of a leverage thing where, hey, I'm a little short, but I'm going to pay you a little bit later. And, they start to realize they're not getting paid and they're just kind of holding on. The typical, cartel MO of kind of manipulating and stringing people along until they have to get violent. Same thing with the meth and the fentanyl thing going on in northeastern Montana that I just mentioned, that Andy Stump and I talked about a lot on the last Change Agents, both being from Montana. We did a second episode together because that was so close to us. So again, it for the sake of the country that you and I are both so proud to be a part of and have fought for, that's one thing of why we do what we do. And I think I can, honestly speak for all of us in this conversation. But when it gets to your backyard, from California, my backyard, literally ground zero that would lead to our team being built, to my backyard in Montana now, it just tells you it's in everybody's backyard. Yeah. So everybody needs to look at this as a personal problem. And you made a really good point when you said, everyone needs to know it's not a political issue. It's not a left. It's not a right. It's not where you sit. And it's not where you sit on the cannabis. Are you a cannabis user? Are you absolutely against it? Do you lean right? Do you lean left? Whatever the case may be. This is an American issue.